This is our ninth class on the Vivekachudamani. Sri Shankaracharya has now described in much detail all the necessary qualifications of the spiritual seeker and all the great qualities of the spiritual teacher. Today he is going to show us how the seeker should approach the teacher. What will be the state of mind of one who is burning with a longing for liberation? And with what attitude would such a disciple approach an illumined, compassionate teacher? Shankaracharya says, this is how it begins. Tam aradhya gurum bhaktya prahva prashraya sevanaihi prasannam tamanuprapya pricche jnatavyam Tamaradhya gurum bhaktya prahva prashraya sevanaihi prasannam tamanuprapya pricche jnatavyam. Worshipping such a master with devotion, approaching him when he is pleased with prostration, humility and service, one should ask him whatever there is to be known about the Atman. I repeat, worshipping such a master with devotion, approaching him when he is pleased with prostration, humility and service, one should ask him whatever there is to be known about the Atman. So the disciple goes to the master with a worshipful attitude, first of all, with an attitude of genuine devotion and faith. The verse immediately brings to mind what Sri Krishna also says in the Bhagavad Gita. How does one gain the knowledge of Brahman? Krishna also says, learn it by prostration, by enquiry, and by service. Learn it by prostration, enquiry, and service. The wise who have seen the truth will teach you that knowledge. So the disciple's attitude should be worshipful, full of devotion and faith. The proof of such sincere devotion is that it manifests itself, it expresses itself through the disciples' thoughts, words, and actions. It shows itself as reverence, humility, and service. First of all, before everything else, first of all, there has to be a sense of urgency. If I am thirsty, I have to go to the spring. I can't expect the spring to come to me. That is one thing. But when I am at the spring, it won't do to place my pitcher above the source. Water can only flow from a higher to a lower level. Sri Ramakrishna said again and again, rainwater cannot collect on a high mound, it runs off. Water collects in lowland. There cultivation is possible. There seeds sprout and grow into trees. Then the trees bear fruit. That means the disciple has to lower oneself, empty oneself of the ego, so that the master's teaching, so that the master's grace may collect in the pitcher of the heart. Unless the vessel is empty, it can't be filled. The word prahva means to bend, that is, to bow down before the Guru in humility. Krishna says the disciple has to prostrate oneself, sich niederwerfen, fall flat before the Guru. That is how to show reverence, Ehrfurcht to one's spiritual master. But still, this prostration of the body is only an outer expression of the true inner humility. Then the word prashraya. Prashraya means humbleness. After prostrating oneself before the Guru, the disciple has to address the Master, speak to him with the utmost respect and humility. That is the second thing. Then comes the most important of all, seva, service, rendering personal service to the Guru. Prahva, prashraya, sevana. It is only when the disciple is personally near the Guru and gives him personal service, it is only then that the ego is fully disciplined. Otherwise, the disciple may become a big scholar, but as I said, he can't be called a spiritual aspirant unless the ego is fully subdued. So, service provides the opportunity for self-denial, self-abnegation, Selbstverleugnung. Not only that, it is during these hours of nearness, that the disciple learns about the secrets of spiritual life. How does that happen? First of all, by close observation. When one is near one's master, one gets a chance to watch them closely. Not critically, closely. Watch their minutest actions and see for oneself how perfectly the teachings of the scriptures are reflected in an enlightened teacher's entire character. It is as if the master is the very personification of the teachings of Vedanta, and it is there for the disciple to see for oneself, especially during such periods of closeness. That is why seva is important. But then, it is not only the disciple who observes the master will also be watching. The master will also be watching, assessing, evaluating the disciple. We must know that an illumined guru doesn't need anybody's service, but by serving him with love, that is important. To serve him with love. By doing that, the disciple receives his grace. What can't be learned from books, what can't be taught by word of mouth, those secrets are silently communicated during these quiet hours of personal service. These are very special moments when an intimate rapport is established between two pure souls, the master and disciple. On the part of the disciple, he is filled with reverence. And on the part of the master, he is filled with love. This is when spirituality is transferred. So, selfless, loving service to the Guru, that is where the disciple's worthiness is tested. That is where the disciple has to prove his devotion. Then the verse says, Prasannam tam anuprapya. When the Guru is thus pleased, when the Guru is pleased in this way through the disciple's reverence, humility and service, then the disciple should approach him and priched jnatavyam atmanah. Ask him what is to be known about the Atman. That is, seek to learn from the Guru the nature, the essential character of the indwelling Atman. The Shastras say one must avoid discussing worldly matters with an illumined soul, especially when he is one's own guru. Having an illumined soul for one's guru, being in his holy company, serving him, and having received his grace, what a pity it would be to waste it all by talking with him about anything other than the Atman. In the Mundakopanishad, we find the Guru urging his disciples, Amanan, know that non-dual Atman alone and give up all other talk. Know that non-dual Atman alone and give up all other talk. That means, having come to know about the Atman within, the disciple should strive for its realization, giving up everything related to the world. All talk related to the world is futile, even harmful for a seeker of Brahman. Only through self-knowledge can one cross the endless ocean of samsara and attain immortality. So, tam aradhya gurum bhaktya prahva prashraya sevanaihi prasannam tamanuprapya prichhe jnatavyam. Worshipping such a master with devotion, approaching him when he is pleased with prostration, humility and service, one should ask him whatever there is to be known about the Atman. All in all, humility, a spirit of enquiry, and personal service to the teacher. These are the main conditions of discipleship. This is the idea the verse conveys. Then the next two verses try to give a picture of the mental state of a soul that is extremely, severely distressed by worldly existence, phenomenal existence, samsaric life not only in this world but also in other worlds, higher and lower. They try to give a picture of the soul that is burning with the longing for liberation. The anguish of a soul of such a soul, the anguish that it feels in samsara is hard to describe. It can hardly be described, nor can others who have not suffered like that imagine that suffering. It is like a terror, like the terror of a drowning man, the terror that a drowning man feels when he is being helplessly borne away by the river. That is how it feels. Death is certain, there is no escape. Now, if by chance such a person sees somebody on the bank who can save him, how does he beg? How does he implore? Unflame. How does he beg that person? That is the mental condition of an aspirant whose soul is yearning for liberation intensely. Tivra mumukshutva. So Shankaracharya gives an idea of how such an aspirant will pray to the Savior when by chance, by God's grace, a Savior is found. The verse says, Swamin namaste nataloka bandho karunya sindho patitam bhavabdhau mam uddharatmiya kataksha drishtya rijvyat karunya sudhabhivristya. Swamin namaste nataloka bandho karunya sindho patitam bhavabdhau mam uddharatmiya kataksha drishtya rijvyati karunya sudhabhivristya. O Master, O friend of all devotees, I bow down before you. O you, boundless ocean of mercy, I have fallen into this sea of samsara. Save me with that steady glance of your eyes, which shed supreme nectar-like grace. That is how a mumukshu actually feels. The very first words that spontaneously rise to the lips are Swamin Namaste, O Master, I bow down to you. At first sight, the aspirant instinctively recognizes his Savior and addresses him as Master. When I call somebody my Master, when I say I prostrate before you, it means I surrender myself. I surrender my ego to him unconditionally. Once I am certain that the man in front of me is an enlightened soul, and when I have accepted that person as my guru, I entrust myself wholly to them. Then the disciple says, Nataloka bandho karunya sindho, O friend of all devotees, O you boundless ocean of mercy. Last week we heard that the Sadguru is ahetuka daya sindhu, an ocean of mercy that knows no reason. Anamatam satam bandhu, a friend and relative to all good people who humbly entrust themselves to him. This is what the Savior is. As I said, our worldly bandhus, relatives, are sources of bondage, bandhana. But the Guru is our spiritual bandhu who wants to release us from bondage. How? By removing our ignorance, by freeing us from our sufferings. To such a Guru, the disciple prays, Bhavabdhau patitam mam uddhara. I have fallen into this sea of samsara, save me. This sea of samsara is always full of waves of suffering. Suffering in the form of repeated birth, disease, old age, death. It is humorously said that in an ordinary sea, the waves come and go. But in the sea of samsara, they keep coming relentlessly. But it's not funny. At least that is how a mumukshu feels. To a real mumukshu, even our joys and happinesses, even they are suffering because they contain the seeds of future pain. And he sees that. He has had enough experience. That is why he has turned to spiritual life, decidedly. Then sometimes the 6 enemies of spiritual life. The 6 enemies of spiritual life, we have heard about them. They are also likened to waves: lust, anger, greed, delusion, pride, envy. These are all compared to waves because they come upon us. They wash over us like waves, immersing, drowning us in nothing but suffering. So the disciple prays to the Guru, please rescue me from all this. Save me from this never-ending round of birth, death and rebirth. And how? Atmiya kataksha drishtya, by a mere look, that is enough. With a mere sidelong glance of your eyes, that is enough. This is no exaggeration. Let us not think that these are just exaggerated feelings of a soul that is suffering and begging for help. No. an enlightened guru who has become one with Brahman, such a guru has the power of saving souls by a mere look. That is a fact. Just a mere look purifies their devotees. It is so purifying that we read in the scriptures, everyone upon whom the gaze of a knower of Brahman falls is purified of all sins. Everyone upon whom the gaze of a knower of Brahman falls is purified of all sins. They themselves may not know immediately, but this is the fact. There are dozens of hymns and prayers addressed to the Guru in which that look, where that look is glorified. Dozens of records of actual experiences of devotees whose life was completely transformed by such a look. They actually felt that they had become pure, freed from all sins. This was their experience. And their life proved that. That is most important. It's not enough to feel or say. Their life showed that the Guru's look had transformed them. Anyhow, then the disciple describes that look. Rijvya, steady. How is that look? It's a steady look. Riju means straight, steady. The illumined Guru's look is like a straight rope. It's like a straight, taut rope, strafgespanntes Seil. Catching hold of that, the disciple can pull oneself out of the waters of samsara, because that is where he finds himself now. Or, it is like a straight beam of light coming out of its source and revealing an object. See how beautiful these comparisons are. The ray of light emanating from the Guru's eyes is set to enter the heart of the disciple and reveal the Atman within. And then, Atikarunya Sudhabhivrishtya. Atikarunya Sudhabhivrishtya means showering the nectar of supreme compassion. The supreme compassion of the Sadguru is like a shower of nectar upon the disciple. The mythical nectar is said to restore the dead back to life. But the nectar of the Guru's supreme compassion, the shower of that nectar, that removes forever, once for all afflictions of samsara and makes the disciple immortal. So the disciple prays, Swamin namaste nataloka bandho karunya sindho patitam bhavabdhau ma muddhara atmiya kataksha drishtya rijvyati karunya sudhabhivrishtya. O Master, O friend of all devotees, I bow down before you. O you boundless ocean of mercy, I fall into this sea of samsara. Save me with that steady glance of your eyes which shed supreme nectar-like grace. In the next verse also, the disciple prays to the Guru from the bottom of his heart with extreme longing for liberation. It has become impossible for him to wait any longer. He has suffered so badly. Durvara samsara davagni taptam dodhuyamanam duradrishtavatai bhitam prapannam paripahi mrityo sharanyamanyadyadaham najane. I am burning in the unquenchable forest fire of samsara. I am being shaken violently by the winds of misfortune. I am terrified and I seek refuge in you. Please save me from death. I know no one else with whom I can seek shelter. Durvara samsara davagni taptam dodhuyamanam duradrishtavatai bhitam prapannam paripahi mrityo sharanyamanyad yadaham najane. So, samsara, phenomenal existence, has become like a raging, unstoppable forest fire to the mumukshu disciple. Once a forest fire breaks out and is allowed to grow, it goes out of control in no time and it becomes durvara, irresistible, unstoppable. It rapidly spreads in all directions, scorching, burning, devouring everything in its way. And if it happens to be aided by the wind, then it is usually too late to help the situation. The disciple says, Durvara samsara davagni taptam. I am being roasted by this unstoppable forest fire of samsara. The word taptam, burnt, is derived from tapa. Tapa means heat. Here, tapa means suffering, misery. Samsara is a huge fire that burns a living being with sorrow and misery. The scriptures speak of three kinds of misery: tapatraya, dukkhatraya. The misery caused by diseases of the body, sufferings of the mind, that is one. Then the misery caused by other living beings, humans and animals, that is the second. And then the misery caused by the elements of nature, forces of nature, and other supernatural factors. Samsara is full of these, and it is as if the disciple is being roasted alive in this fire of suffering. That is not everything, as if this were not enough. He says, Dodhuyamanam duradrishtavatai, that is being shaken violently by the winds of misfortune. In a raging forest fire, the winds are strong, unpredictable. They can blow in any direction, and they do blow in all directions, and the fire spreads everywhere. They may carry a man away from the fire, or they may drive him into it, blowing the flames on him. They are so unpredictable. In any case, they are terrifying. But what are these winds of misfortune? They are the effects of one's own past evil deeds. The winds are nothing but the results of the sins one has committed. We don't know what all we have done in the past. But now there is no way of escaping their results. And that is what terrifies the disciple. Bhitam, terrified, because he doesn't know what is going to happen to him. Being terrified, I seek refuge in you. Prapannam, seeking refuge. Therefore, paripahi mrityo, do save me from death. Do save me from destruction. Because sharanyamanyad yadaham najane, I know none else with whom I can seek shelter. Now, there are only two ways the fire will stop. Either it exhausts itself, in which case the destruction of the forest is complete. Or it must be extinguished with water. These are the two alternatives. The first alternative, total destruction, is no alternative. That is what the disciple is wanting to save himself from. That is why the disciple prays to the Guru's Atikarunya Sudhabhivrishti, a shower of the Guru's supremely compassionate, nectar-like grace. The shower of Guru's grace has the power of washing away the disciple's spiritual ignorance. It has the power of revealing the Atman within. It can quench the fire of samsara forever. The disciple knows this instinctively. The moment he recognizes his Savior, he knows this. That is why he surrenders himself to the Guru without reservation. I take refuge in you because there is nobody else who can protect me, who can save me. If you remember, this is how the great hero Arjuna also surrendered to Krishna. This is what he also did. When Arjuna's heart was overpowered by pity for his relatives, when his mind was confused about where his dharma lay, when he didn't know what to do, he also turns to Krishna in prayer. Do tell me what my duty is. I am your disciple. Instruct me. I am your disciple. I have taken refuge in you. So, until the seeker acknowledges, bestätigt, until he acknowledges oneself to be a disciple and surrenders himself, the teacher may not impart the highest knowledge. The teacher will wait. So, Durvara samsara davagnitaptam dodhuyamanam duradrishtavatai bhitam prapannam paripahi mrityo sharanyamanyadhyadaham najane. I am burning in the unquenchable forest fire of samsara and shaken violently by the winds of misfortune. I am terrified and seek refuge in you. Save me from death. I know none else with whom to seek shelter. Sri Shankaracharya was a rare combination of philosopher and poet. And this Vivekachudamani is a proof of that. The last two verses that we just now went through, and the next few verses, the next 2 or 3 verses, these half a dozen verses especially, they are no doubt of extraordinary literary beauty. And Shankaracharya's poetic genius has been praised by scholars and readers in general. Most people have admired the exquisite way in which he has used different figures of speech. But there also have been a few who have felt that Shankaracharya has indulged in hyperbole, Übertreibung. So, what he has said in these several verses is not meant to be taken literally. That is what they feel. Whatever it is, we are not interested in literary criticism here. But I must say this, Shankaracharya was first and foremost a spiritual personality. Whatever else he might have been, he was first and foremost a spiritual person. He knew as such, being spiritual, being a master, he knew every inch of the way. So I'm personally inclined to believe that he he has just said it as it is. This is probably how a pure soul caught in this terrible world and dying to get out of it actually feels. This is probably how the world appears to it. Who knows? We have no idea. What are figures of speech or hyperbole to scholars are actual realities in higher spiritual life. This is the truth. Only they know who have passed through those stages. Let us think of ourselves, how badly we suffer when we go through phases of mental anguish in our lives, how badly we suffer. Unable to express ourselves, afraid of revealing our inner condition even to close friends. And what a relief it is when we find help. How grateful we are to our friends, to our doctors and psychiatrists. That should give us at least a faint idea of a mumukshu's mental condition. When a soul lost in samsara finds its savior, this is how it feels. Shanta mahanto nivasanti santa vasantaval lokahitam charanta tirna swayam bhima bhavarnavam janan ahetunanyana pitarayanta. These really beautiful words. Shanta mahanto nivasanti santa vasantaval lokahitam charanta tirna swayam bhima bhavarnavam janana hetunanyana pitarayanta. There exist good souls, calm and great, who like the spring do good to the world. Having themselves crossed the dreadful ocean of samsara, they help others to cross it without any motive whatsoever. The words Shanta, Mahanta, Santa, all three have occurred before. Shanta means perfectly calm, a quiet person, one whose mind is not subject to desire, one whose mind is not swayed by passion. Still, Mahanta means one who has realized one's own Atman as beyond all limitations. Mahanta, limitless. The Mundaka Upanishad says, such a knower of Brahman is non-different from Brahman. A knower of Brahman becomes Brahman, infinity itself. But in ordinary parlance, however, Mahanta means magnanimous, grossherzig. And Santa literally means a person who has realized the Sad Vastu, the one thing that really exists, Brahman. So a knower of Brahman is a Santa. One who knows that Brahman exists, one who has realized the existence of Brahman, who lives in the awareness of one's own non-difference from Brahman. That is a Santa. But again, in common usage, it has come to mean somebody who is saintly. Anyway, let me not get too literal or we'll ruin the beauty of the verses. The sentiment is more important here. Shankaracharya says, there do exist, nivasanti, there do exist such calm, great, saintly souls. How do they live? Vasantavallokahitam charanta, doing good to the world like the spring season. Summer is hot, winter is cold, autumn is wet, and none of them is particularly pleasant. It is only with the coming of spring that nature turns bright and beautiful. It is only in spring that the season brings joy and happiness to every heart. Shankaracharya compares the great souls of the world to the spring season. Their actions are not always visible, but the effect of their mere presence is wonderful. Their very existence is a blessing upon the world. But how? What do they do? Swami Vivekananda says, their work is silent and they work best. We don't know how they work. Tirna swayam bhima bhavarnavam, having themselves crossed the ocean of the terrible sea of samsara. Bhima bhavarnava means terrible sea of samsara. Ahetuna anyan jananapi tarayantaha. They help others cross it without any motive whatsoever. That is what they do. You can't ask why. Because they themselves have no wants. They don't desire anything for themselves. Their only desire is to relieve others' suffering. That is the only answer. Like we heard last week. Sir, do you ask a flower why it blooms? Can we ask the moon why it cools? That is their nature. An illumined soul, this is the fact, an illumined soul becomes a lover of the whole universe. And the pure love of such a soul is spontaneous and knows no reason. That is all we can say. There is no other answer. And that is what Shankaracharya himself says in the next verse. He says, Mahatmana mayam svabhavaha. It is the very nature of these great souls. What? Swata eva, of their own accord, unasked. Parashrama apanoda pravanam. Parashrama apanoda pravanam. To work to remove others' troubles. Just as, another comparison, just as Esha Sudhamshu, this moon. Sudhamshu means one with nectar-like rays, bright but cooling. Just as this moon, Swayam, of its own accord, unsought, Arka Karkasha Prabha Abhitaptam Kshitim Avati, cools the earth scorched by the harsh rays of the sun. So this is how the verse is. Ayam svabhava svata eva yat parashamapanoda pravanam mahatmanam sudham shuresha swayamarka karkasha prabhabhitaptam avatikshitin kila. It is the very nature of these great souls to work of their own accord to remove the troubles of others. Just as the moon of its own accord cools the earth scorched by the fierce rays of the sun. Now, once again, a word to those who think that the great Shankaracharya is carried away by his own poetry. I've already said that people like us can't begin to imagine the depth of the love and compassion that enlightened souls have for ignorant souls like us. We have no idea. They have Brahmajnana like a fruit in the palm of their hands. They could very well immerse themselves in the bliss of samadhi and just forget the world. They can do it whenever they want it. But they resist even that supreme bliss. And they choose to stay behind and help us to raise us to their level. Why? So that we too could have a taste of that divine bliss. But what could what could be their motive? You know Sri Ramakrishna's parable of the four friends. Once, 4 friends, when they were out for a walk, they come across a place enclosed by a wall. The wall is very high, and they become curious to know what is inside. So one of them climbs up the wall, and what he sees on the other side makes him speechless with wonder. And crying, "Oh, oh," he just jumps in without giving even a thought to his companions. Then the other 3 also climb up the wall, and of those 3, 2, like the first one, 2 of them also shout, "Oh, oh," and jump in. Only the 4th man comes back and tells the people of the village about the wonderful place he has seen behind the wall. I hope you know this parable. Sri Ramakrishna says, Brahmajnanis are like this. They keep their bodies. They keep their bodies even after attaining Brahmajnana solely in order to help others. They could easily give up their bodies and merge themselves forever in the bliss of Brahman. It is extremely, extremely painful for a soul that has realized its infinite blissful nature to return to this little cage of flesh and bone and live in this awful world. We get clear hints of this in the life stories of sages, including Holy Mother Sharada Devi and Swami Vivekananda. We get clear hints of this, how painful it is to them. But they make this supreme sacrifice, swata eva, unasked, unsought. What makes them do it? The only answer we can think of is love, compassion. So, this is the great soul to whose presence the disciple has come. The disciple burnt by the fire of samsara, and the master waiting to soothe his soul. The master is true, is a true master, and the disciple is also worthy. The moment they meet, they recognize each other. The disciple knows what the master is, and the master knows what the disciple is. In fact, the meeting of a real mumukshu and a real mahapurusha, the meeting of these souls is a rare occasion. It's an extraordinary event in the spiritual world, one of the most beautiful things of spiritual life. The joy of it is known only to them. So in the joy of that meeting, the words that flow spontaneously from the disciples' lips, they are not just words, they are spontaneous outpourings of the heart. So here the disciple goes again. Brahmananda rasanubhuti kalitai putai sushitair yutair yushmadva kalashojhitai shrutisukhair vakyamritai sechaya santaptam bhavatāpadāva dahana jvalabhirenam prabho dhanyaste bhavadikshana kshanagate patrikrita svikrita. This is fantastic. O Master, sprinkle me with your nectar-like words, sweetened by the bliss of Brahman, purifying, cool, and soothing to the ear as they emerge from your lips as water from a pitcher. I am scorched by the flames of the forest fire of samsara. Blessed are they upon whom even a passing glance of your eyes falls, accepting them as your own. I'll repeat it once more in the end. On the one hand, the disciple is extremely humble in his prayer. On the other, he is equally confident that the Guru will save him. This is what we see in the verse. He feels that he has already been purified by the mere glance of the Guru's eyes. And for his part, the Guru has come to know in one look that this disciple deserves protection. He is worthy. The disciple's attitude, his words, leave no doubt about his devotion to the Guru. The way he has surrendered himself to the Master, it indicates that he has no other refuge, really. The disciple addresses the Master as Prabho, O Lord, meaning that he has surrendered to the Guru unconditionally. And then he prays, bless this disciple of yours who is Bhavatapa Dava Dahana Jwalabhis Santapta. Tormented in body, mind and soul by the burning flames of samsara. And how should the Guru bless him? Vakyamritai sechaya, sprinkle me with your nectar-like words. Yushmadva kalashojhitaihi, words that flow from your mouth as water from a pitcher. The disciple is so badly burnt that the Master is to him like a big jar of cool, clean water. Then he says, your words are Brahmananda Rasanubhuti Kalitaihi, sweetened by your experience of the bliss of Brahman. That is why they are also Putai, purifying, clean. And then they are Sushitair Yutai, exceedingly cool. That is to say, the bliss of Brahman lessens the burn or removes the burning caused by the threefold miseries of samsara. And lastly, for all these reasons, they are Shruti Sukhai, a delight to the ear. The Guru's words are sweet like nectar, purifying and cooling, but above all, they are life-giving. They are life-giving. That is why they are a delight to the ear. But now, after praising the Master's words in such beautiful terms, the disciple says something. He says something. Well, it is, I don't know how to describe it. He says, Dhanyaste, blessed are they, who bhavadikshana kshanagate patrikrita, upon whom even a passing glance of your eyes falls. Not just words of instruction, not verbal guidance, but it is the Guru's glance of grace that saves the disciple. About the saving power of the Guru's mere look, we have already heard much today, so I won't repeat myself. When that gracious look falls upon one knows without a shadow of a doubt that one is svikrita, accepted. That acceptance means everything to the disciple. He has surrendered to the Sadguru unconditionally. He has nowhere else to go, no other refuge. And by a mere look, the Sadguru assures him. The Guru assures him that he has been accepted. being accepted by a Sadguru is as good as being saved. Nothing short of it. And the disciple knows it. Just as the disciple's self-surrender was unconditional, the Sadguru's acceptance of him is also unconditional. Just as a father can never really reject his son, the Guru can also never reject his disciple. But if you don't like the words surrender, acceptance, rejection, we could say the love that exists between Guru and disciple is unconditional. So, the disciple says, Brahmananda rasanubhuti kalitai putai sushitai yutai yushmadva kalashojhitai shrutisukhair vakyamritai sechaya santaptam bhavadapadav dahana jwalabhirenam prabho dhanyaste bhavadikshana kshanagate patrikrita svikrita. O Master, sprinkle me with your nectar-like words, sweetened by the bliss of Brahman, purifying, cool, and soothing to the ear as they emanate from your lips as water from a pitcher. I am scorched by the flames of the forest fire of samsara. Blessed are they upon whom even a passing glance of your eyes falls, accepting them as your own. Thank you.